when you realize a game from 15 years ago had better whips. Oh my God, dogs. This is something else. So this is something that I just now realized going back in there and playing some of these older MX versus ATV games, like specifically MX versus ATV Unleashed, right? I got to thinking, I was like, dog, the freaking whips feel better in these games from all the way back in this time than they do now in like MXGP Pro and MXGP, 1, 2, 3. I mean, you can even say they felt better back in these days than they did in MX versus ATV Supercross. I mean, you can even say that because you could barely even, and I'm not talking about Supercross Encore, I'm talking about just the original Supercross, right? Holy God, bro. Got that skill gappy pop-off system on Unleashed here, but yeah, so it's just, it is insane when you realize that, when you go back and realize a game from that long ago, dude, half of my lifetime ago, had a better whip system than what we're getting in these modern day MXGP Pro. Like, seriously, guys. And some of you guys are going to get upset when I say that. Some of you guys will be like, oh, what the fuck, Spencer, you can't say that. Dude, there's no way it's better. Like, no. Listen to me. Don't look at anything else, okay? Don't look at the graphics. Don't look at any of that kind of stuff like the ground decals or the... Don't look at any of that. Just simply look at strictly the actual whip itself in the air. Don't look at anything else, okay, when you're talking about comparing it straight to... Oh, I thought I was going to hit that tree there. When you talk about comparing this straight to MXGP Pro, okay, look strictly at the rotation of the bike, how far you're able to rotate it, how much more natural it looks. Let me try to actually get off of a jump here without resetting myself. I don't know why on earth the reset button is hitting the gas and brake at the same time. That is really frustrating. Got a similar pop-off system in MXGP Pro, but not as bad, obviously. But I mean, the difference is with this pop-off system is you're literally hitting like 200-foot sky-it-out jumps and flat landing it, whereas you would never even be able to hit a jump like that on MXGP Pro. You know what I mean? You're popping off on 5-foot doubles on MXGP Pro. That's the difference there, right? Like this game, you're actually jumping big enough to where you would expect to pop off hitting that big of a jump in real life, right? And the insane thing on top of everything else is back in the days of MX vs. ATV Unleashed, this was the days when you only had one stick controls. And it still had a better whip system than what MXGP Pro has with two stick whip controls. You understand what I'm saying? Like that's just another level of insanity when you realize that. Like you're only able to actually turn the bike with one singular stick back in the days of Unleashed, and it still feels better than what they can pull off with MXGP Pro with two sticks. That shouldn't even be possible. What the hell? That shouldn't even be remotely possible. I don't give a fuck what game company you are or what kind of motocross game you're making. That should literally not even be possible. A one-stick control whip in a game feeling better than a two-stick whip control motocross game. I cannot believe I'm even saying that. Like, you guys should feel ashamed. You guys should be... Literally, like, that's a disgrace, Milestone. And even to MX vs. ATV Supercross. Those are it's not, I'm not just hating on Milestone here. It's, they went down the shitter hole with the whip systems in all the motocross games, it seemed like they're, 3 or 4 years ago, right? I mean, just absolutely down the shitter hole. And Milestone still hasn't really figured it out. That's what I'm getting at. But also, MX vs. ATV Supercross, when they went to that game, it was just terrible. Like, what the hell? Either they get it way too restricted where you can't hardly move the bike, you can't hardly whip it no matter how you turn the bike over, or it's like the whole Milestone issue where it just feels like you're literally hitting a button and it's just playing an animation. That's not what a fucking whip is, people. You gotta understand, just because you can whip it damn near backwards on MXGP Pro doesn't mean it's a good whip system. You understand what I'm saying? That's not what I mean by free, okay? Yeah, you can whip it, like, to the side pretty far on, like, MXGP Pro or Supercross 2, the official video game, but it's kind of pointless whenever you literally could have your whip system on the fucking A button and it would be the same difference. You understand what I'm saying? It kind of defeats the whole purpose. Like, it literally just feels like you are hitting a button. And as long as you hold that button, that's how far it's going to whip. And when you let off of that button, then it's going to pull itself back around. That is literally what it feels like in those milestone games. MXGP Pro and even into like Supercross 2 and stuff. There's no rotation at all. There's no like natural rider movement over the jump face. It's so weird. It's so bizarre. But that's the whole point of having a whip system in a motocross game, is to where you kind of can throw your own flair and your own style into it. There is no your own style whenever you're literally hitting a button and playing an animation. There's none of that, people. You gotta understand that. Like, that's what makes MX Simulator so great. That's what makes Reflex so great. Not the only thing, but that's one of the big things that makes their whip system so great, is you can literally do endless amounts of styles of whips. Endless. You can do where you're like ever so slightly more of the front of the bike. You can get up under the bike. You can get to the side of the bike. You can do pancake whips, upside down whips, throw it all the way around backward whips, turn up whips, scrubs. There's the whole like scrub versus whip mechanic type vibe aspect. I didn't even get into that shit. that is like another giant problem with the milestone games, is you can't really do like a scrub versus a whip. You're basically just doing a whip. It's not really like a, okay, I really laid that bike over and kept it on the ground, versus like jumping up in the air and doing a big whip. You know, if you guys know motocross, which a lot of you guys do, obviously, but if you really know, like, scrubbing and whipping is two completely different things. I'm talking night and day difference on what it looks like, what it does, the whole 9 yards of it. And then you got, like, hybrid things where you can do, like, a in between a scrub and a whip, you know what I mean? Where it's not like a full-blown scrub, but it's, or you can, like, kind of do something where you come off the jump face in a scrub, and then it kind of turns into a whip if it's like a drop-down jump or something like that. Then you got like hip jump scrub, cool shit you can do. That's like the whole point of having a whip system in a motocross game, is so that you can do your own kind of whip and have your own kind of personal style. And so when you get on a game like MXGP Pro and you turn your thumbsticks and you're literally just rotating the bike out in the most generic, general fucking way you ever could possibly imagine doing in a motocross game, every single time you come off a jump face, it defeats the entire purpose. Like, there's no point of it anymore. It's boring. Nobody wants to whip anymore in the milestone games. Oh, and on top of all that, they don't even really have that big enough of a jump to really throw a sick, thug, nasty, fatty, freestyle, free ride whip on any of their tracks anyways. They don't really have like big jump free ride tracks like y'all come to know and love back in the days of MX vs. ATV Unleashed and Untamed and Reflex and stuff, where you're hitting like 300-foot dune jumps, just whipping it completely backwards all the way upside down the bike. Like, that shit is such a fun aspect to motocross, and I just don't know why on earth Milestone is not capitalizing on that. They're just so far off on their whip system that I don't think you're ever going to see like a true being able to do different kinds of unique whips and stuff on the milestone games until they completely rip down their physics system. I honestly don't. Like, if they don't do a full overhaul, I'm talking rip her down to the undersnares. Like, if they don't do that, then you're not going to see what you want to see. And that's just basically, I mean, it's just so weird. I didn't even think a motocross game could really be like the milestone games as far as the whip system. It's such a bizarre experience, because typically when you get into a new motocross game like MX vs. ATV All Out or Reflex or whatever, any of those kind of motocross games like that, once you first get into the game, you start kind of learning the whips, and it's like, you come off a jump face, you turn both your thumbsticks the same direction, and you kind of roll it, you kind of roll the thumbsticks, and that's how you kind of you learn the whole whip system that way, right? Whereas when you get into a milestone game, it's literally like, what you do at the beginning is you feel like you're playing some other motocross game, and you jump off a jump, you turn both your thumbsticks the same direction, and it barely even moves because you can't even whip like that in a milestone game. So then it's like, oh, okay, this is fucking weird. Why do I have to turn both my thumbsticks the opposite direction? So then you do that, and then you literally just turn your left thumbstick completely to the right, your right thumbstick completely to the to the left or vice versa, you know what I mean? One thumbstick one way, one the other way, coming off the jump face, and it just rotates your ass end out, it just swings your ass end out, and then it brings it back around. There's really nothing else to it. There's no, you're not like, there's no like actual rotation on the fucking axis itself. You understand what I'm saying? It's literally like you're just froze in a up-down position, but you can turn your ass end out in the air. It is such a restrictive, locked-in feeling that you have in the MXGP Pro and some of the milestone games, pretty much all the milestone games, let's not kid ourselves here. Such a restrictive, such a repetitive, feel like you're doing the same thing over every jump face. I mean, at least with MX versus ATV Unleashed, you could at least do somewhat of different kinds of whips. Like, I know it's not an insane different kind of thing you could do, but you have to keep in mind, you're using one fucking thumbstick from a game from 2005, dog. Like, it is insane what you can do on Unleashed for what it was versus what you can't do in MXGP Pro from a game, 13, 14 years later, what you should be able to do. That is just so insanity to me that a motocross game company could be that far off with not only their whip physics, but just their whole entire in-air filling physics system in general. You know what I mean? That's what I'm saying. But it's so funny when you go back and realize literally that there is more of a fun factor, more of a unique feeling, more of a rotation on the axis, all of that kind of shit to the whip system in MX vs. ATV Unleashed than there is in MXGP Pro. I literally shit you not. I mean, if you can get over seeing like the older graphics and all that kind of vibe, then you will enjoy this whip system twice as much as you do any of those whip systems in any of those milestone games. I swear to God you will, because there's actually something to it. It's not just like hitting a button, playing an animation. There's actually something to it. Like when you come off in the air on MX vs. ATV Unleashed, first of all, there's actually like, you're somewhat having to seat bounce, right? And even if it's not an actual seat bounce button like in Reflex, you're still, doing a leaning motion coming off the jump face, whereas on most of the milestone games, the leaning does pretty much nothing when you talk about forward and backwards leaning on a jump face to actually do a huck. There's pretty much none of that in a milestone game. And let's just be honest, all the jumps are so small anyways, you don't even need to do it. So, yippee-ki-yay, bud. But my point being is, like, when you come off a jump face on either Reflex or Unleashed or whatever, you're already kind of having skill gap to even how you're leaning when you're coming off the jump face. Then there's the whole, like, personal flare and rotation when you're not only leaning coming off the jump face, but how you're rotating that bike on the base of the face and then the top of the face, and then when you come off the jump face. It's like it creates so many different variations of different types of scrub whip combinations and stuff that you can do that it feels endless to a certain extent. You know what I mean? It feels like you could do a different whip every single time you come off of that jump face in a certain way. Like you can either be leaning more forward and throw the whip and it'll kind of do more like a turn down whip, or you can be leaning, you can kind of like, see, Reflex is where it gets a lot more deep in that sense because it's a two-stick control, so you can actually like jump off the jump face, be turning the bike, but then roll your actual rider lean from the bottom up to the side or the top and then lean over so you can actually get up under it a lot better. Whereas with Unleashed, it kind of has to do both of that within one stick, so it can feel a little bit more one-dimensional in Unleashed, but that's come to be expected in a game from that old. You know what I mean? But my whole point being is, why the hell does MXGP Pro with two thumbsticks from, 2018 motocross game feel worse than a game from 2005? Why is that the case? A one-stick control game from 2005. Like literally, at least with Unleashed, there's somewhat of a little bit of variation with you can actually somewhat pancake it versus like with Unleashed, if you're just wanting to do more of a pancake whip, you just really turn the bike over and jump up in the air, and it's going to do that, it's kind of going to do that standard, more pancakey rotation, or you can kind of jump in the air and then get on your brakes, and it'll kind of swing the ass end around like more of that kind of whip, more of like actually rotating the bike to the side versus rotating it, you know, like actually where you're getting the tires up beside you. You know what I mean? Instead of rotating it like a pancake, you're more rotating it just where you're throwing your ass end out. So you can have that variation of like where when you hit your brakes in the air on Unleashed in the middle of a whip, it's gonna kind of not make you do as much of a pancake rotation, but more of just a standard ass end out rotation. You know what I mean? And then you got your whole leaning once you get in the air. So when you come off the jump face and you're rotating, it all depends on how much you're leaning forward or backwards on how different of a whip it's going to do. So you at least have some variation to what the hell you're doing in a whip with even Unleashed. And with the MXGP Pro, it feels like there's no variation. It feels like there's no difference to what you're doing. You're just playing a goddamn animation. You feel like you're on a railroad, and then when you hit a button, that railroad turns a certain way, and that's the whip, and you can't really get off the railroad. You understand what I'm saying? I'm trying to paint a picture here for you, dog. With MXGP Pro, it's like you're on a railroad that curves, and that's all there is to it. It has to follow that curvature of the whip, and then it just kind of pulls itself back around on the railroad. There is no rotational axis, whereas like with MX Simulator and Reflex and stuff, it's like you're just riding on a flat surface. There is no railroad, you know what I mean? You're not stuck when you go up the jump face and whip in the air. You're not forced down a linear whip path like you feel like you are in the MXGP Pro and stuff like that. I just thought, the only reason I'm coming here making this video is I just thought it was hilarious coming in here after playing all those modern day milestone games and coming in here MX vs ATV Unleashed. It's like, holy shit, dog, why does this feel better than that? This should not be feeling better than that as far as the in the air whip system. Why in the hell does it feel better than that? That is so insane to me. So either way, and of course, a lot of the new Milestone fanboys are not really going to even understand. The kids today won't remember MX vs ATV Unleashed and some of the older games and stuff. And even if they go back and play them, they'll be like, "What the hell is these graphics? This game sucks. I don't like this game." You know how they would be with this. They don't understand it. But my whole point being is like, it's a game from 2005 with one thumbstick. That's my whole. You gotta always remember that and take that into account when I'm doing this comparison here. It's like insanity that it's even a comparison at all. Like that's my whole point. Like yeah, you can say that MXGP Pro and maybe Supercross 2, obviously yeah, it's gonna whip it out probably a little bit more, you might could say, than Unleashed, because sometimes with Unleashed kind of hard to get it way out there without popping off on it. But my biggest point here is it's that different types of rotation with your damn thumbstick coming off of that jump face. You actually feel like you can do different things, whereas it's got that looseness to that aspect of it, you know, whereas MX vs ATV Supercross or those Milestone games, it all feels restrictive. It's like, you know, hashtag free the fucking whips. Like, and some people get confused by that, and they see like gameplay of MXGP Pro or whatever, and somebody's whipping it like really far over, and they think, oh, well, that you can whip in that game. You know, it's not like restrictive. They freed the whips. That's not what I mean by free the whips. Free the whips is not only how much you can whip, but it's also how much you can rotate it on the axis. You know what I'm saying? When you're coming off the jump face, how many different types of whips you can do. How much of a not feeling like you're just hitting a button playing an animation. All of that gets taken into account whenever I say talking about free whips. It's not just how big of a whip you can do. It's how many different types of variations of whips you can do, and how the difference of being able to do a scrub versus a whip and not just feeling like they're both the same thing in one game. You know, that whole kind of vibe. That's like, that all goes into account. A lot of people don't really understand that with whenever I say like free the whips, you know, hashtag free the whips, they just think, oh, well, that just means as long as you have a big whip. And I didn't even think it was even possible until I started seeing those Milestone games to have a whip system where you can whip it over pretty far, but it's like there's no variation to it. There's no rotation on the axis itself. It's so weird. There's no like getting up under the bike really, versus, you know, just swinging it out to the side or actually pancaking it or any of that kind of stuff, or turn up whips or anything. Have you ever seen somebody do a goddamn turn-up whip in MXGP Pro? No, you never have seen that because you can't fucking do it. Have you ever seen somebody actually get up under the damn bike like, you know, like they do in some of those whip contests and stuff? No, you don't see that at all on MXGP Pro because you can't do it. All you can do is pretty much slide your ass end out, straight out. I'm not even talking about kind of like rotation slide your ass end out. Like with Unleashed, it kind of, when you go up in the air and you're doing a standard like turn to the side whip, it automatically kind of rotates your bike on that not only to the side axis, but also it starts to kind of pancake the bike a little bit on Unleashed. Whereas with the MXGP Pro and the Milestone games, it just simply rotates it straight out to the side. You know what I mean? And that's kind of the difference. Now, if you want it to do that on Unleashed, then you can start hitting your brakes in the air, and it will do more of that. You know, it won't have that much of that rotation, getting up under the bike, pancaking access to it. There's a lot to it, guys. I know it's just motocross games. I get it. But, like, you got to understand how much a good whip system can add to a motocross game. It is a whole nother level, a whole nother layer of fun learning a new whip system to a motocross game. I can't even describe it. Like, if MX Simulator didn't have the whip and the scrub system that it has, it wouldn't be half the game that it is. Wouldn't be half the game. There is just something so magical, something so fun to hopping on a track on MXM and just throwing thug nasty whips. It's like a whole entire full learning skill gap system to MX Simulator. It could take you literally months on top of months just to learn the whip system to that game, like it would in real life, like really trying to learn how to whip in real life. You know what I mean? That is just so amazing how JLV captured that on MXM. But even with Reflex's whip system, specifically on the Xbox 360 version, I know it's not quite as good on the PC version, but specifically Reflex on 360, oh my god, bro. Like how much you could actually scrub, like on one of the desert, like dry hard pack motocross tracks. Some of those jumps you can just absolutely scrub gnarly, dude. Like James Stewart scrub style, and really actually legitimately like shave off time by doing it. So it's not just pointless, you're actually doing it for a reason, you know, on Reflex. And then not only that, you can hop on a one of those badass free ride tracks of Reflex and do your more like big jump 200 foot, just absolutely whip it plumb over and get up under the bike and all kinds of the whole 9 yards of it, right? And it's so much fun doing that because of how free and loose every aspect of the whip system feels. You know, you feel like you can just do any kind of whip you could possibly imagine on Reflex or MX Simulator. Obviously a little bit less of Reflex is kind of the arcade version of MX Simulator in a sense, you know what I mean? But still, both those games are very similar in the aspect of you feel like you can just do endless types of whips, endless combinations, endless different own personal touches and flares you can throw to the whips. And then you get on a game like MXGP Pro and literally every single person is doing the exact same thing, and you might as well have your whip system on the A button versus a thumbstick because it's the same difference. All it's doing is hitting a button and playing an animation. That is all it is fucking doing. It's not even actually, when you actually think about the whip mechanics and physics system to the Milestone games, it's not even really actually a whip system. It's a fucking hit a button and play an animation system. Don't sit there and try to act like that's actually a whip system. That is not a whip system. Do not sit there and say that that's a whip system in 2018. That is not even close, dog. That is not even close. It's a turn your thumbstick and we're going to play this animation so it looks like you're whipping, and then when you pull your thumbstick back, the bike's going to pull back around. That's all it is. It's the most simpleton fuck simple. It's not even a whip mechanic. That's the funny part about it. I don't even consider the Milestone games having a whip mechanic. First of all, because I never even want to do it because it's fucking pointless and retarded, and you feel like you're just hitting a button playing an animation. Oh, and the fact that you have to turn both your thumbsticks the opposite direction to do it, like what the fuck, you know, on top of all that, just makes you never even want to do it anyways, and then it becomes an obsolete aspect, and then you just never want to whip. Whereas like when you're riding on Reflex or MX vs. ATV Unleashed or MX Simulator, you're damn near whipping on every single jump face. You know what I mean? But with the Milestone games, it's like, why would I even do that? It's not even fun. There's no point to it. It's not really shaving off time that much. It's boring. It's hit a button playing animation. I'm seeing the same thing every time I hit the button, like, or turn the thumbstick, you know. God, dude. All I got to say is, Milestone, you're getting fucking lapped by MX vs. ATV Unleashed, a game from 13 years ago when it comes to whips. What the hell are you doing, dog? You need to sit down and take a damn break for making all them 10 games a year and sit down and rework them goddamn air physics. I'm telling you right now, if you don't do it, you're just going to keep killing off your fan base. You're going to keep hurting your community. You're gonna keep just annoying people. Like, that's you're missing so many core heavy motocross game elements, core game mechanic elements that you're fucking missing, dude. And it's inexcusable at this point. It really is. You could have kind of gave them more excuses when it came to like MXGP 2, 3, maybe. You know, but nowadays when we're plumbed to Supercross 2 and MXGP 2019, there's no more excuses for having that shitty of a whip system. There's just no more excuses for it, Milestone. Hate to break it to you, bud, but there's just, like, come on now. You have got to start fixing that. Either way, dudes, I'm just saying, go play some MXGP Pro, whip on that a little bit, and then go back to MX vs. ATV Unleashed, and you will see what the hell I'm talking about, dog. It's like, oh, good God, wow. All right, yep, that's just grand. That's great that a game from 2018 has a worse whip system than a game from 2005. Like, it's literally unbelievable. I couldn't believe it when I came back to this, and I was like, holy shit. This feels so ancient, but yet better than what we're getting in those newer Milestone games. It's just insanity. So either way, appreciate you guys watching all the videos. Be sure to leave me some good old hate comments down there, you Milestone fanboys. You know I love it, dog. Like, just cracks me up. Gives me a good old cackle, boys. So either way, dudes, appreciate all the support. Be back on the next video. Later, dudes.